Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nasia, and I have to start with something that might surprise you. But before we get to that, I would like to welcome you to today's masterclass, The Hidden Costs of Getting AI Wrong. Why 80% of AI projects fail, and how strategic leaders beat the odds. So, last week, I had a conversation with a CEO who told me his company spent around 300,000 euros on what they thought was cutting edge AI. 3 months later, they discovered it was basically a fancy chatbot that couldn't do anything their own intern couldn't do with a spreadsheet. And you know what? He is not alone. And that's exactly why we are here today. We're going to talk about, obviously, the hidden costs of getting AI wrong. And more importantly, why 80% of AI projects are failing and how the smart 20% are actually building competitive advantage. Now, I know you're busy, so I promise you this. By the end of our time together, you'll have 3 specific strategic insights that will save you from making the same expensive mistakes I see happening everywhere right now. So, here what we're going to uncover during our time together. First, I'm going to show you why Gartner predicts that 40% of AI projects will be canceled by 2027. Not delayed, canceled. That's billions of euros or USD in wasted investment. Second, you'll discover 3 strategic decisions that separates the companies getting real value from AI versus those just burning cash and hoping something sticks. And third, I'm going to show you how to avoid what I call the 670,000 mistake. And yes, that's a real number from recent research about what companies are losing when they're getting this wrong. Now, you might be thinking, Nasia, our company's been talking about AI for months. We've got people taking courses. We've looked at some tools. That's exactly why you need to be here, because what I'm seeing in the market right now, most of the activity is making things worse, not better. Let me be direct about who this conversation is for. This is for senior leaders who've been watching competitors announce their AI initiatives and thinking, we need to do something too. But what exactly? This is for you if you're feeling pressure to do something with AI, but you suspect, and you're probably right, that a lot of what you're seeing announced is expensive theater. This is for leaders who've sat through demos where vendors promise that AI will transform everything. But you walk away thinking, that looked impressive, but now, does it actually help my business? You're right to be skeptical. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how to separate the reality from the very expensive hype. We're going to cover 3 strategic insights today. First, the 180,000 lesson. This is a real story about why technical excellence doesn't guarantee strategic success. I'll show you exactly what went wrong and what the companies getting this right are doing differently. Second, the agent washing crisis, how to spot real AI capability from marketing nonsense. Here's a spoiler alert for you. 97% of what's being called an AI agent aren't actually agents at all. And thirdly, the strategic ROI formula. Why professional implementation actually costs 30% less than doing it yourself, even though it seems counterintuitive. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, we're planning to learn AI ourselves to save the consulting fees. That's exactly what we need to talk about inside number 3. Before we jump in, let me tell you why I'm qualified to waste your time today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nasia Skoulikariti, the founder and CEO of Data. I've been leading technology transformation for about 30 years now across telco and IT. I've been through the cloud wave, the mobile wave, the blockchain bubble, IoT, and now AI. Do you remember when companies were adding blockchain to their names and watching their stock prices triple overnight? Here's what I've learned through my time in telco and IT. Every single technology wave follows a similar pattern. Companies that nail the strategy before jumping on the technology win big. Those who chase tools first, they burn cash, burn confidence, and usually they burn through a few careers in the process. That is exactly what's happening with AI right now. The same playbook, the same mistakes, just bigger budgets and higher stakes. AI transformation is bigger and faster than anything we've seen so far. Now, if you're feeling like everything is accelerating too fast, you'd be right. And this isn't just about learning new tech. It's about shifting how you think, how you plan, and how you talk to your customers. For centuries, knowledge stayed still. You learned something, and that gave you value for life. That's how most of us built our careers. Let's look how that happened. From 1440s to around 1992, knowledge was static. It was physical. Think of the printing press. Then came the digital wave, the internet, search, active learning. And now, from 2022 onwards, we have generative, adaptive, evolving knowledge. ChatGPT isn't just giving us answers, it's reshaping how we ask questions. AI isn't new, just now, finally, it's usable for everyone. And that means your clients, your competitors, your internal teams, they're all expecting more from what you know. In the past, deep knowledge gave you a career. Right now, the half-life of technology knowledge has shrunk from 10 years to 2.5 years. In the future, you'll still be essential, but only if you evolve. You're not alone. So, if you're thinking, where do I even start? You are not alone. That's why I've built the TechStage Hub and developed the frameworks you're going to see today. Not because I love technology, though I do. Mainly because I hate watching smart leaders make predictable, expensive mistakes. So let's make sure you're not one of them. All right, let's look into the first strategic insight. I call this the 180,000 euro lesson. And it's about why technical excellence does not guarantee strategic success. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's obvious, but I promise you, The smarter leaders I know are making this exact mistake right now. They're buying incredible technology that does not solve any business problem. Let me show you what I mean. Here are some numbers that should scare all of us. 53% of small and medium enterprises found that AI implementation costs were much higher than they anticipated. And 45% cite cost as their primary concern about. But here's a real story that illustrates that problem. I know a manufacturing company, very smart people, profitable business, good leadership. They invested 180,000 euros in what was marketed as an AI-powered quality control system. 8 months later, they discovered it was basically automation with decision trees. No learning, no intelligence, no adaptation. It was doing exactly what a series of if-then statements could do, just with a much fancier interface. They had to rebuild the entire system from scratch. Costs doubled, timeline extended by 18 months. And meanwhile, their competitor, who did this right, gained market share. They're still trying to win back. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's their fault for not doing proper due diligence. And you would be partially right. But you know what? They did do due diligence. The vendor had great references, impressive demos, even some awards. The problem wasn't technical due diligence, it was strategic clarity. So, what went wrong? 4 things to be exact. They bought tools first and figured out strategy second. They saw impressive technology and thought, we need that, without asking, how does this create competitive advantage? And do I really need this? Does it solve a problem in my organization? They had no integration plan with his existing workflows. The AI system was supposed to slot into their existing process, but nobody mapped out how that would actually work day to day. They had no measurement of business outcomes. They measured technical performance, accuracy, processing speed, but never connected that to business value. And critically, they confused technical capability with business value. Just because the system could do something complex didn't mean it was doing something useful. Now, let me show you what the winners do differently. Lumen took a completely different approach. They started with a clear operational efficiency goal. Not let's implement AI, but let's eliminate the 4-hour bottleneck that's killing our sales productivity. They measured business metrics from day one: time savings, cost reduction, actual revenue impact per seller. They integrated AI into their existing sales strategy rather than treating it as a separate project. And most importantly, they proved ROI before scaling. They didn't bet the company on AI working. They proved it worked in one critical area, and then they expanded. And here's what Lumen achieved in 2024. They reduced sales preparation time from 4 hours per seller to just 15 minutes using AI. That's a 94% time reduction on critical business process. This translates to projected annual time savings worth 50 million. This is not theoretical savings, actual bottom line impact. And they're seeing the industry average of $3.50 return for every dollar invested in AI, with some of the top implementations achieving up to 8 times the ROI. That's return on investment. The difference wasn't better technology. Any telco could have bought similar AI tools. The difference was Lumen took a strategy-first approach instead of technology-first approach. They didn't ask, what's the coolest AI we can implement? They asked, what's our biggest operational bottleneck and how can AI solve that specific business problem? That brings us to the first strategic principle. AI strategy starts with business strategy, not technology strategy. The question then isn't what can AI do? Because AI can do a lot of impressive things that don't matter to your business or your bottom line or your competitive advantage. The question becomes, what strategic advantage do we need AI to create? What problems do we currently face in our company, and what bottlenecks do we currently have that we need solving? That's a completely different conversation, and it leads to completely different decisions. Let me give you a simple framework to think about this. I call it the strategic AI value matrix. You evaluate every potential AI application on two dimensions: business impact and technical feasibility. High impact, high visibility, that's your strategic priority. Do it first, do it well, prove the value. High impact, low visibility. Now, for that, partner with somebody or acquire the capability. Don't try to build it yourself. Low impact, but high visibility, that's an efficiency play, not a strategic move. It might be worth doing, but it's not going to create competitive advantage. And finally, low impact, low visibility, just avoid that entirely. Most companies I see doing projects in the third quadrant, low impact but high visibility. They're automating things that don't matter because they're easy to automate. That's not strategy, really, folks. That's just busy work with expensive tools, toys, and gadgets. And that brings us to the second strategic insight, the agent washing crisis. And when I say 97% of AI agents aren't real agents, I mean that literally. This isn't marketing hyperbole here. This is based on recent research from Gartner that should mentally change how we collectively evaluate AI vendors. Let's look at Gartner's shocking discovery for a minute. Of the thousands of vendors claiming they offer agentic AI capabilities, only 130 are genuine. That's less than 3% of the market. The rest, they're basic chatbots with automation tools that have been rebranded as AI agents. Now, why does this matter for your business decisions? Because you're probably getting pitched AI agents every week. Your team might be evaluating agentic AI solutions. You might even have budget approved for agent deployment. And if you're not careful, you're about to spend serious cash on fancy chatbot. I had a conversation last month with a head of operations who showed me a demo from a vendor promising autonomous AI agents for customer service. Impressive demo, I must say. Slick presentation, compelling ROI projections. And I asked them one question. What happens when a customer asks something it hasn't been programmed to handle? The answer? Well, it escalates to a human. There you go. That's not an agent. That's expensive FAQ system. So what's the difference between real AI agents and marketing nonsense? Real AI agents have 4 capabilities: autonomy. They operate without constant human intervention. You don't need to prompt them for every action. The activity, they respond to environmental changes. When conditions change, they adapt their behavior. Proactivity, they take initiative towards goals. They don't just respond, they anticipate and they act. And social ability. They interact with other systems intelligently, not just following predetermined protocols. Most of what's being called agents are just chatbots with decision trees. They can only respond to predefined scenarios. They can't learn, they can't adapt, they can't take initiative. So here's a simple test. If the system needs a human to write prompts for each task, it's not an agent. If it can only handle scenarios it was specifically programmed for, it's not an agent. If it can't improve its performance based on experience, it's not an agent. Most of what you're being pitched fails on all those 3 tests. Let me give you a concrete example of the difference. 3UK, that's one of the major telecom operators in Britain, uses real AI agents to manage network operations. These systems process 30% of the nation's data traffic. They autonomously manage network load, balancing, and traffic routing without human intervention. When network conditions change, say there is a spike in usage in London because of a major event, these systems automatically reroute traffic, adjust bandwidth allocation, and optimize performance across the entire network. No humans tell them to do this. They recognize the pattern, understand the goal, and take the action. Now, compare that to most customer service AI agents I see getting deployed. They follow predetermined scripts with variable insertion. Customer says billing problem, system follows the billing tree. Customer says something unexpected, system says, well, let me connect you to a human. How many of you have been through that exact scenario when you're chatting with a service bot? That's not intelligent, is it? That's just an expensive phone menu. Nothing wrong with it, but it's not an AI agent. The strategic difference is huge. Real AI agents can handle complexity, ambiguity, and novel situations. They create genuine operational leverage. Fake agents just make simple processes seem more sophisticated while add cost and complexity. Is there value to the fake agents? Of course there is, but let's call them what they are: automation assistants. RPA with AI bolt. In my own business, most of my automations are done via automation assistants. An AI agent would have been an overkill for what I need to be done. So you might be in the same situation where you don't really need to spend and invest on AI agents, but you just need assistance to do some of the work of the repetitive tasks. Now, why does this matter for your business? Companies buying fake agents, which, remember, it's 97% of what's being sold, face several real costs. 80% implementation failure rate because technology can actually do what it was promised. 50,000 to 500,000 euros in direct remediation cost when you have to fix or replace the system. 18 to 24 month delays in getting real competitive advantage because you've burned time and budget on something that doesn't work. And the opportunity cost, while you're dealing with a fake agent, it's disaster. Your competitor who did this the right way are pulling ahead. But this is not just about the money. This is about competitive positioning. Every month you spend implementing the wrong AI solution is a month your smarter competitors are building real advantage. Here's a simple framework to protect yourself. Before any AI investment, ask yourself these 4 questions. Can it operate without prompts for each action? If you need to tell it to do every step of the way, it's not autonomous. Can it adapt its approach based on results? If it can't learn from success and failure, it's not intelligent. Can it coordinate with other systems independently? If it needs human interpretation to work with your other tools, it's not really integrated. Does it learn and improve from experience? If it works exactly the same way on day 100 as on day 1, it's not an agent. If the answer to any of this is no, you're looking at sophisticated automation, not strategic AI capability. That might still be valuable, but don't pay agent prices for automation functionality. Which now that brings us to our third strategic insight, the strategic ROI formula. This one really surprises people because it's completely counter in professional AI implementation actually costs 30% less over 3 years than doing it yourself, while delivering 3.7 times better return on investment. Yet, 87% of organizations choose to do it themselves because they think they're saving money. Let me be clear about what I mean by professional implementations versus DIY. DIY doesn't mean you're coding AI models yourself. It means you're trying to figure out AI strategy, select tools, manage implementation, and measure success without bringing in specialized expertise. Professional implementation, on the other hand, means you're working with people who've done this successfully multiple times and know how to avoid the common pitfalls. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Nasia, consultants always say you need consultants, and that's a fair point. But I'm not talking about spending millions on McKinsey to do a year-long AI transformation. I'm talking about targeted expertise at critical decision points to avoid expensive mistakes. The math is actually pretty compelling when you look at the total cost of getting this wrong. Let me show you the hidden cost of the DIY approach using numbers that are relevant for SMEs and mid-market companies. First, we're going to look at the executive execution time. When senior leaders spend on average 90 to 500 hours taking AI courses and experimenting with tools, that's around 25,000 to 150,000 euros in opportunity cost. Not the course fees, the value of what else you could have accomplished with that time. I know a CEO who spent 6 months becoming an AI expert. Great learning experience. But during those 6 months, 2 competitors launched AI-powered features that shifted market dynamics. His education was expensive in ways that don't show up on any budget. And we have the failed pilot. And here's a sobering statistic. Only 14% of small businesses successfully implement AI, compared to 34% of large firms that typically have professional guidance. The failure rate of DIY approaches is frankly brutal. Then we have the technical integration cost. Legacy systems integration averages between 100,000 to 300,000 euros for SMEs when done without proper planning. That's not the AI technology cost. That's the cost of making it work with what you already have. Then finally, we have the compliance risk. This is the big one, especially for European companies. The EU AI Act penalties can reach 35 million euros. Amateur implementation doesn't just risk failure of the project, it risks regulatory exposure that could threaten that business. But here's what really gets expensive. It's the opportunity cost while you're figuring this out. Now, let me show you what professional implementation looks like in practice. Deutsche Telekom's AI chatbot handles over 1,500 customer questions and has reduced the service cost by 35%. But most importantly, it improved customer satisfaction because customers get faster, more accurate responses. That didn't happen because Deutsche Telekom has better technology than your company. It happened because they approached this strategically with proper expertise and integrated AI into their existing customer service excellence goals. I spoke with an SME manufacturer who used professional implementation guidance to achieve a 20% reduction in customer complaints through AI-powered quality predictions. The total investment was less than half what their competitors spent on failed DIY projects. The success rate difference is dramatic. 26% of professionally guided companies achieve scaled AI value versus 4% of the DIY success rate. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between AI creating competitive advantage and AI creating expensive headaches. And here's the strategic insight that changes how you think about all this. Companies that succeed treat AI like any other strategic capability. They invest in expertise, not just tools. You wouldn't build your own ERP system from scratch, would you? Well, perhaps some of you. You wouldn't design your own data center. You wouldn't try to become expert in international tax law to handle your own compliance. Strategic AI requires the same approach. Not because you can learn it. You're smart enough to learn anything, but because the learning curve is expensive and the cost of mistakes is extremely high. The question isn't really, can we figure this out? It's, what's the most effective way to get competitive advantage with and from AI? The answer is usually some combination of internal capability building and targeted external expertise. A hybrid approach, if you like. Let me give you a practical framework for making these decisions, shall we? First, we have the core business systems. These are AI applications that directly impact your competitive advantage. Always use professional implementation here. The cost of getting this wrong is too high, and the value of getting it right is too important. Then we have the experimental learning projects. This is where a hybrid approach makes a lot of sense. Professional guidance for strategy and architecture, internal teams for execution and learning. You build capability while reducing risk. For commodity application, things like basic documentation, processing, or simple chatbots, DIY is acceptable here, as long as you have proper governance and realistic expectations. Then for competitive differentiations, these are the AI capabilities that could fundamentally change your market position, strategic partnership, or professional build. Don't risk your competitive future on amateur hour. Most companies I see are doing quite the opposite. They're spending big money on consultants for commodity applications and trying to DIY their competitive differentiators. And that's exactly backwards. So let's recap these 3 strategic insights. Strategic thinking over technical fascination. Start with business strategy, not cool technology. And we have real capability assessment over marketing hype. 97% of AI agents are not actually agents. And we have professional implementation over DIY disasters. It costs less and delivers better results despite seemingly more expensive upfront. Now, knowing these principles and implementing them strategically are very different challenges. This is what most executives tell me after they understand these principles. And I would also like to hear from you. Nasia, I get it. AI needs to be strategic, not tactical. But how do we actually build that strategy? How do I know what to invest in first when every vendor says their solution is the most important? How do I present this to my board in a way that gets buy-in without sounding like I'm jumping on the AI bandwagon? These are the right questions, and they're hard questions, because building AI strategy isn't about understanding the technology. It's about understanding how AI creates competitive advantage for your specific industry, for your specific competitive dynamics, facing your specific challenges. That's not something you figure out in a weekend workshop. Let me leave you with one final thought. We're at a moment in business history where AI is creating the biggest strategic opportunity since the internet. But just like the internet, most companies are going to waste this opportunity by focusing on technology instead of strategy. The internet didn't create value because it was impressive technology. It created value because smart leaders figured out how to use it strategically to serve customers better, operate more efficiently, and build competitive advantage. The same thing is happening with AI right now. The question then isn't whether AI will transform your industry. That's guaranteed. It will. The question becomes whether you'll be leading the transformation or scrambling to catch up. So stop chasing AI tools and start building competitive advantage. I want to thank you for your time today. I know time is money and it's expensive, but it's been a pleasure, and I hope this was valuable for you.